I never thought the worst betrayal of my life would come from the son I raised. My name is Evelyn Miller. I'm 58 years old, and for 30 years, I poured everything I had into a small house on Maple Street in Cedar Hill. My late husband Thomas and I painted every wall, planted every rose bush, and built every memory within those walls. But 3 months ago, I received a letter that changed everything. Mom, the house is in my name now. Claire and I will be making the decisions going forward. Just like that. No warning, no conversation, just a cold typed letter from my own son, Eric. I sat at my kitchen table, and read those words over and over until they blurred. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper. How could this happen? How could my home, my life, be taken away without me even knowing? The answer came to me slowly, like poison seeping into clear water. 6 months earlier, Eric had visited. He'd been so helpful, so concerned. Mom, let me handle the property tax paperwork this year. You've got enough on your plate. I trusted him. Of course I trusted him. He was my son. But hidden in those documents, buried beneath legitimate tax forms, was a property transfer agreement. And I had signed it. I had signed away my own home without even realizing it. I felt my chest tighten. My breath came in short, painful gasps. This wasn't just about a house. This was about 30 years of my life. This was about trust, shattered into a million pieces. But that was just the beginning of my plan. Let me take you back to the beginning so you understand what I lost. Thomas and I bought that house in 1995. It was small, modest, with chipped paint and a leaky roof, but it was ours. We were both teachers at Cedar Hill Elementary. We didn't make much money, but we had love. We had dreams. Evelyn, Thomas used to say, standing in our bare living room, one day this place is going to be filled with laughter, with grandchildren running through these halls. He was right about the laughter. Our two children, Eric and Sarah, grew up in that house. Every Christmas morning, every birthday cake, every scraped knee and bedtime story, all of it happened within those walls. Thomas passed away 8 years ago, heart attack, sudden, devastating. After the funeral, I stood alone in our bedroom and made myself a promise. I'll keep this house alive, Thomas. I'll keep our memories safe. And I did. For 8 years, I lived there alone, tending the garden, teaching until I retired, and slowly learning how to exist without the love of my life beside me. Eric visited regularly. He seemed concerned about me living alone. Mom, are you sure you're okay here by yourself? I'm fine, sweetheart. This house keeps me close to your father. He'd nod, smile, and then Claire, his wife, would chime in. We just worry about you, Evelyn. You're not getting any younger. I should have heard the calculation in her voice. But I was lonely, and their attention felt like love. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you love, this story is for you. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in March. I was having my coffee, the same coffee I'd had every morning for 30 years, when I saw the envelope on my porch. My own son couldn't even hand it to me in person. I opened it right there, standing in my doorway. Mom, the house is in my name now. Claire and I will be making the decisions going forward. We think it's best if you consider downsizing. We'll discuss arrangements soon. Arrangements. Like I was a piece of furniture to be moved. My first instinct was to call him. My hands fumbled with my phone. Eric? Honey, I just got your letter. I don't understand. His voice was cold, professional, like I was a stranger. Mom, we talked about this. You're getting older. You can't manage a house this size anymore. We never talked about this. Eric, this is my home. Legally, it's my home now. The transfer was completed 6 months ago. You signed the papers. My heart stopped. What papers? The property tax documents. You signed everything. It's all legal, Mom. I could hear Claire's voice in the background, coaching him, reminding him to stay firm. Eric, please. There must be a mistake. There's no mistake. We'll talk soon. I have to go. He hung up. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone for what felt like hours. That's when the tears came. Not gentle tears. Violent, body-shaking sobs that brought me to my knees right there on my porch. I had given that boy everything. I worked 2 jobs after Thomas died to pay for his college. I helped with his wedding. I babysat his children every weekend so he and Claire could have date nights. And this was how he repaid me. I pulled myself together long enough to call my daughter Sarah. She lived 2 states away, but we talked every week. Sarah, something terrible has happened. I told her everything: the letter, the property transfer, Eric's coldness. There was a long silence on the other end. Mom, I'm so sorry. But I'm not surprised. What do you mean? She sighed, and I could hear the pain in her voice. Eric's been different since he married Claire. She's ambitious, and she's always resented that you live in that house. She wants to sell it and use the money. But it's my home! I know, Mom. But Claire's convinced Eric that you're not capable of living alone anymore. She's been telling people you're showing signs of dementia. The room spun. What? I didn't want to tell you because I hoped it would blow over. But last Thanksgiving, she told the whole family that you'd forgotten to turn off the stove twice, that you'd called Eric by Dad's name. None of it was true, but people believed her. My mind raced back to Thanksgiving. I'd been perfectly fine. I'd cooked the entire meal myself. She's lying about me? Yes. And now she has what she wanted: control of your house. I felt something shift inside me. The grief hardened into something else, something sharper. Sarah, I need to go. Mom, wait. I hung up and sat in the silence of my living room. The afternoon light was streaming through the windows, the same light that had warmed this room for 30 years. I looked around at the photos on the walls. Thomas and me on our wedding day, Eric and Sarah as children, birthdays, graduations, a lifetime of love. And I made a decision. I wasn't going to let them erase me. The weeks that followed were the loneliest of my life. I tried calling Eric again. He didn't answer. I sent emails. No response. Finally, I drove to his house, the house I'd helped him buy with a loan I never asked him to repay. Claire answered the door. She didn't invite me in. Evelyn, this isn't a good time. I need to speak with my son. Eric doesn't want to see you right now. You're being emotional and it's not healthy. I stared at her, this woman, 20 years younger than me, blocking my path to my own child. I have a right to understand what's happening. You signed the papers, Evelyn. Fair and square. Maybe you don't remember, but that's part of the problem, isn't it? Your memory. She said it so sweetly, with such false concern, that it took me a moment to register the insult. There's nothing wrong with my memory. That's not what Eric says. He's very worried about you. We both are. She closed the door, gently, but the message was clear. I was no longer welcome. I drove home in a daze. When I got there, I noticed something odd. My mailbox was empty, even though I'd been gone all day. I usually had mail. The next day, I checked again. Nothing. On the third day, I waited by the window. I saw the mail carrier come and go. But when I checked the box, it was empty. That evening, I called the post office. Ma'am, according to our records, your mail is being forwarded to another address. What? I never authorized that. The change of address form was filed 3 weeks ago. Would you like me to read you the forwarding address? She did. It was Eric and Claire's address. They were stealing my mail. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, and felt the walls of my life closing in. The next Sunday, I went to church. Cedar Hill Community Church had been my home for 25 years. I taught Sunday school there. I organized the annual Christmas pageant. But when I walked in, something was different. People's eyes slid away from mine. Conversation stopped when I approached. Finally, Martha Henderson, a woman I'd known for decades, pulled me aside. Evelyn, dear, how are you doing? Eric mentioned you've been having some difficulties. My stomach dropped. What kind of difficulties? She patted my hand. You know, memory issues, confusion. He's so worried about you, bless his heart. We're all praying for you. I pulled my hand away. There's nothing wrong with me. Of course, dear. Of course. But I could see it in her eyes. She didn't believe me. I left church early that day. I couldn't bear the pitying looks, the whispered prayers. Eric and Claire had done this. They'd poisoned my reputation, made me look like a confused old woman who couldn't be trusted. If you've ever felt invisible, erased by the people who should protect you, then you know how I felt in that moment. I drove to the lake on the edge of town. There was a small rental cabin there, tucked away in the pines. I'd always loved that spot. On impulse, I stopped at the rental office. Is the cabin available? For how long? I thought about it. About my house that was no longer mine, about my son who wouldn't speak to me, about a town that suddenly saw me as fragile and failing. Month to month, I said. By the end of the week, I'd moved into the cabin. It was tiny. One bedroom, a small kitchen, a living room with a view of the water, but it was mine. No one could take it from me. I spent the first few nights crying, mourning everything I'd lost. But by the fourth night, something changed. I sat on the porch watching the sunset over the lake, and I felt anger replace my grief. Hot, righteous anger. They thought I was weak. They thought I'd just disappear quietly. They were wrong. I went inside and opened my laptop. I might be 58, but I knew how to use technology. I'd taught computer literacy to elementary students for years. I started researching property law, elder abuse, fraud, and I found something interesting. In our state, coercing someone into signing legal documents under false pretenses was fraud. Even if the signature was genuine, if the signer didn't understand what they were signing, the document could be invalidated. I pulled out the property tax papers Eric had given me. I found them in a box I'd brought to the cabin. I spread them on the kitchen table and read every word. The property transfer agreement was buried on page 14. The font was tiny. The language was deliberately confusing. Any reasonable person would have missed it. I took photos of every page. I saved them to the cloud. Then I thought about who could help me. I needed a lawyer. But not just any lawyer. I needed someone who would believe me. Someone who wouldn't see a confused old woman, but a victim of fraud. And then I remembered Richard Chen. Richard had been one of my students 25 years ago. A bright, serious boy who went on to law school. He'd sent me a Christmas card every year, always thanking me for believing in him. The return address was local. He'd come back to Cedar Hill to practice law. The next morning, I drove into town and found his office. It was small, above the hardware store. I climbed the stairs, my heart pounding. The receptionist looked up. "Can I help you?" "I need to see Richard Chen. Tell him it's Mrs. Miller, his fourth-grade teacher." 5 minutes later, Richard came out. He was in his 30s now, wearing a suit, but his smile was the same. "Mrs. Miller, this is such a surprise. Richard, I need your help." His smile faded when he saw my face. "Come into my office." I sat across from him and told him everything. The house, the papers, Eric's coldness, Claire's lies, the stolen mail, the church, the isolation. When I finished, Richard was silent for a long moment. Then he leaned forward. "Mrs. Miller, this is elder financial abuse. It's also fraud, and we can fight it." For the first time in months, I felt hope. How? "We'll need evidence. Documents, witnesses, anything that shows you didn't understand what you were signing, and anything that shows they deliberately deceived you." I pulled out my phone and showed him the photos of the property tax documents. He studied them, his expression growing darker. "This is buried deliberately. No reasonable person would catch this. What do? We file a lawsuit. We challenge the property transfer, and we make them answer for what they did." I took a deep breath. "Will it work?" "I don't know, but we have to try. I thought about my house, my memories, my life. Let's do it." Building a case wasn't as simple as I'd hoped. Richard explained that we needed more than just the deceptive documents. We needed to show a pattern of manipulation and fraud. "Do you have any recordings? Emails? Text messages?" I thought about it. "I have voicemails from Eric and some texts. Let me hear them." I played the voicemails on speaker. Eric's voice filled the small office. "Bam, Mom, stop calling me. You're being irrational. We've been over this. Mom, if you don't stop this behavior, we'll have to consider legal action. Mom, Claire thinks you need to see a doctor." "You're not thinking clearly." Richard's jaw tightened. "These are gold. He's building a narrative that you're incompetent. It's calculated." "What about the mail forwarding?" "That's federal mail fraud. We'll report it to the postal inspector, but more importantly, it shows intent to isolate and control you." Over the next few weeks, we built our case piece by piece. Richard interviewed my neighbors. Mrs. Patterson, who lived next door, testified that she'd never seen me confused or forgetful. Evelyn is sharp as a tack. She helps me with my computer all the time. Dr. Harmon, my physician for 20 years, provided a statement confirming I had no cognitive issues. I've evaluated Mrs. Miller annually. She shows no signs of dementia or memory impairment. But the most damning evidence came from somewhere unexpected. I remembered that Eric had borrowed my old printer a year ago. He said his was broken. He'd returned it after a month. I'd brought it with me to the cabin. Richard had a computer forensics expert examine it. "Mrs. Miller, this is incredible. The printer's memory has cached files, including multiple drafts of the property transfer document. What does that mean? It means Eric drafted the transfer agreement on your printer, and he revised it multiple times, making the language more and more confusing. This shows premeditation. He deliberately made it hard to understand. I felt sick. My son had plotted this for months, maybe longer. Richard put a hand on my shoulder. I know this is hard, but this evidence will win your case. But we weren't done yet. One afternoon, Sarah called. Mom, I found something. What? I was going through old family emails. 2 years ago, Claire sent me a message. She was asking about the house, about what it was worth, about whether you'd ever considered selling. What did you tell her? I told her it wasn't for sale, that you'd never leave, and she wrote back saying, "We'll see about that." My blood ran cold. Can you forward me that email? Already did. Richard added it to our growing file of evidence, but then everything accelerated. In early July, I received a summons. Eric and Claire were petitioning the court for guardianship over me. They were claiming I was mentally incompetent and needed a legal guardian to make decisions on my behalf. If they won, I would lose all control over my life. Richard called an emergency meeting. This is their end game. If they get guardianship, they can sell the house, control your finances, even decide where you live. Can they win? If we don't fight back, yes. They have the advantage right now. The house is in Eric's name. They've created a narrative that you're declining, and they have a lawyer, a good one. What do? We go to court, we present our evidence, and we let the judge decide. I looked at Richard, this young man who'd once struggled with multiplication tables in my classroom. Now he was my champion. Thank you, Richard, for believing me. He smiled. Mrs. Miller, you taught me to stand up for what's right. I'm just following your example. The hearing was set for August 15th. I had 6 weeks to prepare. I spent those weeks in the cabin rehearsing what I would say. Richard coached me, making sure I stayed calm and clear. They'll try to rattle you. They'll bring up your age, your living situation, anything to make you look unstable. You have to stay composed. I will. But inside, I was terrified. What if I lost? What if the judge believed Eric and Claire? I'd be trapped, a prisoner in my own life. If you've ever faced a battle where the odds were stacked against you, you know that fear. But I also felt something else, determination. They'd taken so much from me, my home, my dignity, my peace, but they couldn't take my truth. The night before the hearing, I sat on the cabin porch and watched the stars. I thought about Thomas, about what he would say. Evelyn, you've always been stronger than you know. Trust yourself. I closed my eyes and made a promise. Tomorrow I fight. The Cedar Hill courthouse was small, with old wooden benches and tall windows that let in too much light. I arrived early with Richard. We sat in the front row, reviewing our notes. At 9 o'clock, Eric and Claire walked in with their lawyer, a slick man in an expensive suit named David Brennan. Eric wouldn't look at me, but Claire did. She gave me a small, pitying smile. It took everything in me not to react. The bailiff called the court to order. All rise for the Honorable Judge Margaret Winters. Judge Winters was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Please be seated. We're here for a guardianship petition filed by Eric Miller regarding his mother, Evelyn Miller. Mr. Brennan, you may proceed. Brennan stood. Thank you, Your Honor. This is a straightforward case. Mrs. Evelyn Miller is 58 years old and showing clear signs of cognitive decline. She signed away her house without understanding the documents. She's living alone in a remote cabin. She's refused medical help. My clients, her loving son and daughter-in-law, are seeking guardianship to ensure she receives the care she needs. He made it sound so reasonable, so compassionate. Then he called his first witness, Eric. My son took the stand. He still wouldn't look at me. Brennan asked him a series of questions. Eric answered in a sad, concerned voice. My mother has been declining for over a year. She forgets conversations. She gets confused about dates. When I tried to help her with paperwork, she didn't understand what she was signing. Lies. All lies. But he said them so convincingly. And why did you transfer the house into your name? To protect it. Mom was talking about selling it to a scam caller. I had to act fast. My hands clenched. That never happened. Brennan nodded sympathetically. And how is she living now? Alone in a cabin by the lake, no family nearby. We're terrified she'll hurt herself. When it was Richard's turn to cross-examine, he stood slowly. Mr. Miller, you say your mother was declining. Did you ever take her to a doctor? Eric hesitated. I suggested it. But you never actually took her to be evaluated? She refused. Yet you're asking this court to declare her incompetent without a medical evaluation? I know my own mother. Do you? When's the last time you visited her? Eric's face flushed. I've been busy. Too busy to visit your supposedly declining mother? Even once in the last 3 months? She moved away. She moved to a cabin 15 minutes from your house. Brennan objected. Richard moved on. Mr. Miller, who drafted the property transfer document? I don't remember. You don't remember? It was a significant legal document transferring ownership of a $300,000 house, and you don't remember who drafted it? It was a while ago. Richard pulled out a document. Your Honor, I'd like to enter Exhibit A. This is a forensic analysis of Mrs. Miller's printer. It shows that multiple drafts of the property transfer agreement were created on that printer in Mr. Miller's home over a period of 3 months. The courtroom went quiet. Mr. Miller, why did you spend 3 months drafting and revising a document you then buried in property tax paperwork? Eric's lawyer objected. The judge overruled. Answer the question, Mr. Miller. I wanted to make sure it was correct. Or did you want to make sure your mother wouldn't notice it? No. Mr. Miller, do you love your mother? The question hung in the air. Eric finally looked at me. For just a second, I saw something in his eyes. Shame? Regret? Of course I do. Then why haven't you spoken to her in 3 months? He didn't answer. Richard sat down. Next, Claire took the stand. She was poised, articulate. She talked about how worried she was, how much they wanted to help me. But Richard was ready. Mrs. Miller, Claire, 2 years ago, you sent an email to Eric's sister, Sarah. Do you remember it? Claire's expression flickered. I send a lot of emails. This one was about the family house. You asked what it was worth. And when Sarah said it wasn't for sale, you wrote, "We'll see about that." Do you remember that? The color drained from Claire's face. That was taken out of context. What context makes "we'll see about that" sound caring? I didn't mean. You meant exactly what you wrote. You wanted that house, and you found a way to get it. Brennan objected. The judge sustained it, but the damage was done. Finally, it was my turn. I walked to the witness stand on shaky legs. I placed my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. Brennan questioned me first. He was gentle, patronizing. Mrs. Miller, do you remember signing the property transfer document? I remember signing property tax paperwork. I didn't know there was a transfer agreement in it. But you did sign it? Yes, because I trusted my son. And do you think that shows good judgment? Signing documents without reading them? I looked at him steadily. I think it shows a mother's love. And a son's betrayal. Brennan smirked. Your Honor, this outburst shows exactly the kind of emotional instability we're concerned about. Judge Winters frowned. Mr. Brennan, I'll decide what's relevant. Then Richard stood. Mrs. Miller, have you ever been diagnosed with dementia or cognitive decline? No. Have you ever forgotten to turn off the stove? No. Have you ever called your son by your late husband's name? Never. Yet these are the things Claire told people. Why would she lie? To make me look incompetent, so no one would believe me when I fought back. Richard nodded. You moved to a cabin by the lake. Why? I took a breath. Because my home was taken from me. My son wouldn't speak to me. My church believed I was losing my mind. I needed a place where I could think, where I could be safe. Are you safe there? Yes. Are you happy? I paused. I'm surviving. Richard pulled out a folder. Your Honor, I have statements from Mrs. Miller's neighbors, her doctor, her friends, all confirming she has no cognitive issues. I have forensic evidence showing her son deliberately created a confusing document. I have emails showing premeditation. And I have Mrs. Miller herself, who is clearly articulate and competent. He turned to me. "Mrs. Miller, what do you want?" My voice was steady. "I want my house back. I want my life back, and I want my son to face the consequences of what he's done." The courtroom was silent. Judge Winters looked at me for a long moment. Then she looked at Eric. "Mr. Miller, stand up." Eric stood, pale and shaking. "I've been on the bench for 20 years. I've seen a lot of family disputes, but I've rarely seen something this calculated. You didn't just take your mother's house. You tried to erase her. You damaged her reputation. You isolated her. And then you had the audacity to claim it was out of love." She turned to me. "Mrs. Miller, you are far more lucid than those who tried to silence you." Relief flooded through me. The guardianship petition is denied. Furthermore, I'm ordering an investigation into the property transfer. If the evidence supports fraud, criminal charges may follow. She slammed her gavel. It was over. The next few weeks were a blur. The investigation moved quickly. The district attorney reviewed Richard's evidence and filed charges against Eric and Claire for fraud and elder abuse. The local newspaper ran a story. "Teacher outsmarts her greedy family." Suddenly, everyone in Cedar Hill knew the truth. People I hadn't heard from in months reached out. Apologies, support, offers of help. Martha Henderson from church showed up at my cabin with a casserole. "Evelyn, I'm so sorry. I should have believed you." I accepted her apology. But something had changed inside me. I'd learned who my real friends were. In September, Eric and Claire accepted a plea deal. They pled guilty to fraud. The property was transferred back into my name. They paid restitution for my legal fees and emotional distress. But more than that, they were sentenced to community service, working with an elder advocacy organization. The judge wanted them to understand what they'd done. Sarah flew in for the sentencing. Afterward, we stood outside the courthouse. "Mom, I'm so proud of you." I hugged her tight. I couldn't have done it without Richard. Without you. "What will you do now?" I looked up at the sky. It was a clear autumn day, the leaves just starting to turn. "I have an idea." By October, I'd made my decision. I didn't move back into the house on Maple Street. Too many painful memories now. Instead, I turned it into something meaningful, the Cedar Hill Foundation. It was a nonprofit dedicated to helping elderly people who'd been financially abused by family members. We offered free legal consultations, support groups, and education about elder rights. Richard volunteered his time, so did Sarah, and slowly, others joined. We helped a 72-year-old man whose daughter had stolen his retirement savings. We helped a widow whose son had forged her signature on a reverse mortgage. We helped dozens of people who'd been silenced, just like I had been. The house, Thomas's and my house, was filled with laughter again. Not children's laughter, but the voices of survivors. People who'd fought back. People who'd won. One afternoon in late November, I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard a knock. I opened the door. It was Eric. He looked terrible. Thinner, older, ashamed. "Mom." We stood there for a long moment. "What do you want, Eric?" I wanted to say I'm sorry. I know it doesn't mean much. I know I destroyed everything. But I'm sorry. I studied his face. Was he really sorry? Or was this just another manipulation? I didn't know. And I realized I didn't need to know. "Eric, I forgive you." His eyes filled with tears. "Really?" "Yes, not for you. For me. I can't carry this anger anymore. Can we try again?" I shook my head slowly. "No. You broke something that can't be fixed. But I forgive you. That's all I can give you." He nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I understand." He turned to leave. "Eric?" He stopped. "I hope you learn from this. I hope you become a better man. For your children's sake." "I will. I promise." I closed the door and leaned against it. It was the truth. I did forgive him. But I didn't trust him. And I never would again. That was okay. Later that evening, I sat in the living room of the foundation. Sarah was there, and Richard, and a few volunteers. We were planning our holiday fundraiser. We should do a dinner, Sarah suggested. Invite the whole town. Show them what we've built. I like that, Richard said. I looked around the room, at these people who'd stood by me, who'd believed in me. You know what? Let's do it. The fundraiser was a success. 200 people came. We raised enough money to hire a full-time advocate. At the end of the night, I stood at the podium and looked out at the crowd. A year ago, I lost everything. My home, my dignity, my family. But I found something more important. I found my voice. And I found that family isn't about blood, it's about who stays, who fights for you, who believes you. I looked at Sarah and Richard. Thank you for being my real family. The room erupted in applause. Later, I stood on the porch of the foundation house. The same porch where Thomas and I used to sit on summer evenings. I felt him beside me. Not physically, but in spirit. We did it, Thomas. We saved the house, and we made it mean something. The wind rustled the leaves, and I felt, for the first time in a year, at peace. It's been 2 years since that day in court. The Cedar Hill Foundation is thriving. We've helped over 100 families. We've changed lives. I still live in the cabin by the lake. It's small, but it's mine. I like the quiet. I like the peace. Eric and I exchange Christmas cards. Nothing more. Claire left him last year. She's living in another state. I don't know what happened to her, and I don't care. My grandchildren visit sometimes. They're older now, old enough to understand what happened. Last month, my grandson asked me, "Grandma, do you hate Dad?" No, sweetheart. I don't hate him. I'm sad about what he did, but hate takes too much energy. Are you happy now? I smiled. Yes, I am, and I meant it. I've learned that happiness isn't about things. It's not about houses or money or even family, if that family hurts you. Happiness is about integrity, about standing up for yourself, about knowing your worth. I look back on that terrified woman who received a letter on a Tuesday morning, and I barely recognize her. She was broken, but she rebuilt herself, and now she helps others do the same. The wall of the foundation has a plaque. I had it made last year. It reads, "Family is not blood. Family is who stays." That's the truth I learned. Real family is the people who actually want you there. Everyone else is just relatives. I've found peace, I've found purpose, I've found myself again. For the first time in years, I feel free. That day, justice was finally served, but more than that, I served myself. I fought for my own life, and I won. So let me ask you something. If someone you loved betrayed you, would you stay silent, or would you fight? What would you have done?